أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Verily, our praise is due to Allah. We praise Him, we seek His aid, and we ask for His forgiveness. We seek refuge in Allah from the evils of our own selves and from the evils of our own actions. And whomsoever Allah guides, none can misguide. And whomsoever Allah leaves astray, none can guide back to the correct path. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We testify there is no deity worthy of our worship except for Allah, who is alone, without partner, never has and never will be another. And we bear witness that Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, is the last and final prophet of Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, my brothers, sisters, friends, and family. Thank you for joining me today on this wonderful Jummah Friday reminder, 3rd of Rajab, 1443 after Hijrah, or February the 4th of 2022 CE. My name is Brother Daniel from the Pennsylvania chapter of Embrace, and today, for today's Friday reminder, I'm going to continue on the series that I wanted to begin from last month, in regards about the reflections of the parables that are mentioned inside of the Quran. So this week, we're going to focus on the parable that is mentioned in Surah Ankabut, which is Surah 29, Ayat 41, also referred to as a spider's house. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions inside of the Quran in an English translation, the parable of those who take protectors other than Allah is that of the spider, who builds to itself a house, but truly the flimsiest of houses is the spider's house, if they but knew. Verily Allah doth know of everything, whatever that they call upon besides him, and he is exalted in power, wise. And such are the parables we set forth for mankind, but only those understand them who have knowledge. And it's an interesting topic to reflect on how each surah inside of the Quran is named after certain details or aspects, some of which are in regards about its beginning words, some are named after its context, its message. For example, if we refer to Surah Al-Baqarah, which is known as the cow, which is the second surah of the Quran, it's named after the cow which Bani Israel were commanded to slay, and this is referenced in Surah 2, Ayat 67, or Surah An-Nisa, or the women, is named after because some of the rulings about women that were mentioned inside of it. So then when we look at this one, Surah Ankabut, we can question as to why it is mentioned in such a reflection, or why it is listed as the surah itself, especially since it's only one of the 69 ayahs in total. And this surah, in regards for some history regarding it, was revealed during a time in which the Muslims were being persecuted inside of Mecca. And the themes and the revelation was a means for reminder for those believers who were being prosecuted and persecuted, and to let them know that there is nothing new as to those who are accepting Islam now compared to all the people and believers and the prophets of the past who had suffered these sorts of great hardships and were treated cruelly for long periods of time. And then, of course, by the means and the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at last, by the end, they became the successful and were helped. Therefore, when we reflect upon this surah, we should take heed and heart and know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help will come even when it seems that hope may not seem to be visible, or we may not know how things are going to happen. If we put our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then there is nobody that can go beyond that. But it will inevitably be that a period of trial and tribulation has to be undergone for peace to happen. The old expression sometimes is you can't enjoy a sunny day without some rain. But not only is this a lesson for the believers, but it also has the antithesis of that, which is teaching a lesson to the disbelievers, being warned about their actions. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to these people of when it was being revealed, as well as the failed efforts of the people of the past, and also uses a means of rational arguments against their thoughts and their beliefs in conjecture and refutation of their current positions regarding their thoughts or their protectors that they are putting their trust in. And one of the reflections too is to refute the ideals of shirk, to establish the Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then also to turn one's attention to the signs of the universe so that these signs can confirm the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ being presented for them. And this is where the parable of the home of the spider becomes a powerful, a meaningful expression that speaks to not only just the believer, but also to the non-believer unanimously. So now let's delve into what the ayah actually mentioned. So the surah refers to Ankabut, which is the Arabic language equivalent for a spider. So we, of course, know science has taught us that there are 45,000 different species of spiders in all sorts of habitats around the world, some of which they live underground, some in deserts, some in rainforests, in backyards. There are fishing spiders who live on top of the water. There are spiders underneath the water, such as the diving bell spiders, and even spiders that live as parasites on the webs of other spiders. But the species of spider that is meant in this in particular surah is the one that weaves a web for itself. It stays suspended in it. Therefore, it attracts and kills its prey, ranging from different sorts of insects and creatures caught in the cobweb. And the cobweb, commonly referred to as its home, its nest, its lodging, its living means, and as our earth science or our biology teachers had taught us, this is the abode of the spider, and it's not one to last, because we know that it is often a daily task for that spider to dismantle its web and to rebuild it every single day. And there, while also researching into this, there was this myth that I come across regarding the tensile strength of the spider web, which matches or is even greater than steel. And in certain cases, this is confirmed and can be shown to be correct, but there is the refutation of, when we're comparing a spider's web to the beams of steel in order to build, skyscrapers and buildings and whatnot. It's kind of hard to really compare and contrast between these two things on a macro and micro sort of level. So this is not necessarily what we're speaking about. This is, we're discussing about how the web itself, as we can see it and interact with it, can be dismantled even by the smallest of forces or changes. As an example, a mere wind may cause it to collapse in on of itself, or water may allow for certain parts to be destroyed, or even the occasional aloof person walks into the web and has that small panic attack, which eventually leads to its end. But in the same manner, this spider's home is full of holes inside of its decoration. It does not protect from the cold, the heat, the wind, and any sort of harm, even to the spider itself. And its base structure as well is attached to a supposedly sturdy support. It's usually attached to a wall or a corner, tree branches, or even pillars inside of a building. It is not strong in of itself, and it's usually will lead to its ruin if the thing, out of its own knowledge and expectation of which it relied upon, may fail, resulting in the failure of its work. So basically, if a tree limb would wind up falling down, there goes the there goes the neighborhood, if we will. And to mention further too, in many cases for these spiders is a home of isolation, of preying on victims for its own sustenance, and usually of singular spiders living in that area of that cobweb. But so let's further on this sort of comparison. So the singular form of the Arabic word awliya, which is mentioned inside of this verse, which usually is in the sense used for the word wali. Wali we know as protector, as helper, as governor. A king, ruler, or judge is sometimes a simplified way of translating it. This verse describes of those who worship and put their trust in anyone other than the one true Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they are drawing a comparison to weakness and fragile trust, which can be dependent on one day, yet dismantled and damaged the next, as a foolish sort of endeavor. In the same case of how the parable of the spider weaving this weak home for itself is like the one who is putting their trust into something or someone or something that isn't even real, as a means not to actually be trusted or cannot be trusted. In the same way, how maybe an ill person who will fall into a belief that a doctor, a practice, a medical procedure that they hope to undergo will be the source of the cure from their illness, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the possessor of this sort of cure. Or the same way, if we can refer to a simile, is in regards about a spouse who believes that the source of provision comes from a job or from a business, or in the case of in the means of the loss of this job or change of provision or death would occur to the said person in the family or of themselves, would strain all means of future provision for especially children. Or in the same case, so when we would seek justice with verdicts and laws from a man-made legal system other than choosing the suitable revealed religion and way of life as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the direction of his messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We're putting trust in things that are made by ourselves, knowing that we are going to be insufficient to be able to create that for ourselves. Why would we forego the better for the worse? And just in the same case, just as the spider's webs, threads cling to frailty, weakness, and temporary means, so are the hopes of those who have other people, gods, deities, or objects for solving their problems. Comparing, of course, to the ultimate provider of all sort of provision. Therefore, anything less is feeble and ruinous. Therefore, the house of the spider. And of course, as a disclaimer here, it's good to point out that seeking the help and support of others to achieve that is not blameworthy whatsoever, as long as we as believers have this staunch aqidah in our heart that all benefit and goodness is solely by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and by him alone. And of course, the difference between the two is relying solely on other people and the surrounding and its creation as compared to the one who made the creation, the only one that truly can be relied upon. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us benefit for this sort of reflection. May he protect and provide us all means for all of his slaves and servants upon the face of the earth. And we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ask us and count us as one of those who say, we hear and we obey. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put benefit in all of your days, and we will see you next month, inshallah, to continue with these parable reflections. Allahumma subhanaka wa bihamdi ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.